Suar stood up from her desk and clapped her hands twice, loud enough to cut through the open floor. "Everyone, I found Bree a date." Heads turned. Someone laughed before the joke even landed. Bree kept typing for 3 more seconds, then looked up. "The janitor," Suar said. "Tonight, 7 o'clock. I already told him some coworker wanted to meet him for dinner. He said yes before he knew whose idea it was." A few people covered their mouths. Someone's phone came up, angled low, pretending not to record. Bree set her pen down. "Okay," she said. Suar blinked. "Okay? Tell him 7 works." The laughing stopped being laughing and turned into confused silence. Bree went back to her screen. Nobody clapped that time. Night came down fast over the city, streetlights snapping on block by block. The restaurant was small, paper menus, a hot plate built into every table. Han Tae-hyun sat by the window in a jacket that still had a fold crease in it, like he didn't own many jackets that weren't a uniform. He'd agreed to dinner with a coworker as a favor to a name he barely knew, no details given beyond a time and a place. He didn't find out it was a setup until he saw the whole floor watching through the restaurant's front window, phones still half raised from the office. By then, Bree was already walking in. He almost stood up to leave before he embarrassed her worse by staying. She sat down across from him first. "You don't have to do this," he said. "Do what? Whatever you think this is supposed to be for you." She looked at him over the menu. "I'm hungry. You're here. That's the whole thing." He didn't say anything to that. She ordered for both of them in Korean, mispronounced one word, laughed at herself before he could, and the waitress laughed too. Tae-hyun sat back in his chair like a man who'd been holding his shoulders near his ears for a long time and had just now let them drop an inch. "You're not from a small town," she said. "The way you carry yourself. You've been somewhere bigger than this job." "I've been a lot of places." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got right now." The food came. She ate like she meant it, cracked a joke about the sauce being a personality test, and he laughed. Actually laughed. For a second, the restaurant noise dropped away, and it was just the two of them doing something that felt, to him, dangerously close to normal. Neither of them knew that 4 floors above the office they'd both left an hour earlier, a badge was scanning against a 5th-floor reader that shouldn't have opened for it. With half the department buzzing about the janitor date, with managers gone for the night and gossip filling every hallway that mattered, nobody was watching the one door that did. Before we dive into today's story, we'd love to hear from you. Are you watching solo, or is someone enjoying this with you? And where are you watching from today? Tell us your city or country in the comments below. Now, welcome to Afro-Korean Unique Tales, where unforgettable stories, shocking twists, and powerful moments come to life. Let's get started. 6 weeks earlier, the room was full and Bree was standing at the front of it, waiting for her proposal to come up on the screen. Suar stood up first. "I want to walk everyone through the retail expansion numbers," Suar said, and clicked to the slide Bree had built at midnight 3 nights running. Bree didn't move, didn't speak, watched Suar talk through her own work, word for word in places. After the meeting broke, Bree caught the director in the hallway, alone. "Those were my numbers," Bree said. "Flat, no shake in it. My model. I can send you the file with the timestamp if you need it." The director looked at her for a second. "Send it." That was it. No scene. Bree walked back to her desk and kept working. By that afternoon, the director had quietly pulled Suar aside. She came out of that office with her jaw tight and her badge clutched in her hand, like she wanted to bend it. She didn't go back to her desk right away. She went to the parking garage instead, sat in her car, and pulled up a banking app she checked every night, like it might have changed on its own. It hadn't. 8 months earlier, she'd taken what she told herself was a short-term loan from a man she'd met at a work dinner, a consulting advance. he'd called it, for insight into the merger pipeline nobody had asked her to give yet. She hadn't given anything back then. She just needed the money to cover a gambling debt from her brother that their parents couldn't know about. The advance had a number attached to it now, and the number had grown, and the man who'd given it to her had started calling instead of texting. She opened the thread. A message already waiting. Anything new to send? She stared at it a long time. Didn't answer yet. Put the phone away and fixed her face before she went back inside. From that day on, when Bree passed her desk, Suar didn't look up. The penthouse sat 40 floors above the office. Tae-hyun mopped every night. He came home still in his grey work jacket, dropped his real badge on the counter, and pulled up 3 monitors that lit the dark room blue. He'd been gone 5 years. Tokyo, then Singapore, then New York, buying up logistics companies nobody back home had heard of yet. He came back to Seoul because his legal team called him at 2 in the morning with 4 words. Something's leaving the building. Merger terms worth 9 figures had shown up, word for word, inside a rival firm's internal memo. Only a handful of people had access to that file. Getting back onto the floor without announcing himself had taken more than just walking in. His COO had quietly cleared a maintenance opening, and paperwork for a new hire named Han Tae-hyun had moved through HR the ordinary way, approved by the one director in the building who already knew exactly who he was and had been sworn to say nothing. To everyone else, he was just a name on a schedule nobody looked at twice. Nobody performs for a janitor. That was the whole plan. Most of what he heard in those first weeks was garbage. Gossip, complaints about the coffee machine. But he listened to all of it, because somewhere in the noise was the person who'd sold him out. Then there was Bree. She was the only one who said his name like it belonged to somebody. Once she caught a junior associate laughing at him for taking too long with a spill and said, "Flat, he's working." Walk around it, he noticed. He told himself he wasn't supposed to notice. Suar noticed too, noticed the janitor date hadn't broken Bree the way she wanted. It made her skin itch. She didn't have long to sit with that. Her phone buzzed with a coded meeting time. 5th floor stairwell, 6:50. She got there first. He came a few minutes later, suit too expensive for a man who claimed to work in logistics consulting. "The advance is due for review," he said. "You said there'd be movement on the merger docs by now." "I got you something already," Suar said. 2 weeks ago. The distribution terms. That was appetizer. We need the actual numbers, and we need them before the board meets next month. He looked at her the way a man looks at a tool he's deciding whether to keep. "You're not the only person we're talking to. Understand that." "I understand it fine." "Then find a window. Something's always happening in that building that pulls eyes away. Use it." That was the piece that mattered, though neither of them said it plainly enough to notice. He wasn't asking her to create a distraction. He was asking her to use the next one that came along. And a distraction had come along 3 nights earlier, when half the office spent an evening watching a coworker walk into a restaurant with the janitor, and Suar, badge in hand, had walked onto the 5th floor while nobody thought to check who was still in the building. She hadn't planned the timing. She'd just noticed the door was open. He left first, like always. 4. Stood in the stairwell a minute longer, one hand flat against the cold rail, before she went back to her desk and smiled at a coworker, like her whole life wasn't balanced on a deadline she didn't know how to hit. Back on the 3rd floor, Tae-hyun wheeled his cart past that stairwell 20 minutes later, close enough to catch the tail end of a voice through the door, too far to catch the words. He filed it away. Old habit. That evening he passed Bree in the hallway on her way out, coat already on. "Long day?" she said, like she asked every janitor that question. "Long 5 years," he said, before he could stop himself. She tilted her head, caught something in it she couldn't place yet, and let it go with a small smile instead of a question. Get some rest, Taehyun. She was the only person in the building who said his real name like it belonged to somebody. 3 days later, his security lead, Officer Yoon, flagged something odd in a routine access sweep. A fifth-floor badge scan the same night as the janitor date. Time-stamped almost to the minute the restaurant photos had circulated through the office group chat. Yoon didn't know whose badge yet. The log had a fault in it, a partial read. Coincidence, maybe, Yoon said, laying the printout on the supply closet table. Or somebody used the noise as cover. Taehyun looked at the timestamp a long time. Pull every badge that scanned within an hour of that door. All of them. I want to know who wasn't where they were supposed to be that night. They started meeting without calling it meeting. He'd be finishing a shift near the loading dock, she'd be leaving late from a client call, and their paths lined up more than coincidence should allow. The third time, she brought 2 coffees and handed him one without asking if he wanted it. You drink it black, she said. Watched you at the break room machine. You never touched the sugar. You've been watching me at the coffee machine. I notice things, she shrugged. It's a skill, or a curse. Depends on the day. They ended up walking instead of saying goodnight at the door, down toward the river, past the food carts closing up. He kept his jacket zipped to the collar even though it wasn't cold, an old habit from years of meetings where he had to look a certain way. You're not from a small town, she said again, like she was still turning it over. You've been somewhere bigger than this job. I've been a lot of places. Can I tell you something? She said, and you don't make it weird. Depends what it is. Being here, this job, all of it. Half the time, I feel like I'm auditioning, like if I stop proving I belong for 1 second, somebody's going to notice I'm not supposed to be in the room. She looked out at the water. You're the only person in that building who doesn't make me feel like I'm auditioning. He stopped walking. She stopped a step later. There's something I should tell you, he said. About who I's phone cut him off, buzzing hard. He looked down. Yoon. 3 missed calls, which meant it wasn't nothing. I have to take this, he said. He stepped a few feet away, kept his voice low, came back a minute later with his jaw tighter than before. Everything okay? She said. Work thing. He almost laughed at how true and how false that sentence was at the same time. I should get back. The moment had a door in it and he let it close. She noticed, but didn't chase it. At the entrance, she bumped his shoulder with hers. Light, easy. For what it's worth, she said. Whatever you didn't say, I'm not going anywhere. He watched her walk to the elevator bank and didn't move until the doors shut. 2 days later, they ended up at the same noodle stand near the loading dock. Plastic stools, steam fogging up between them. She was mid-story about a coworker's disastrous karaoke attempt when she said it. No weight behind it at all. Oh, random. I saw Sua on the 5th floor a few nights back, way after everyone left. Same night as our first dinner, actually, now that I think about it. I remember because I was still annoyed about the whole setup when I saw her badge. Blue stripe. Probably borrowed it or something. He went still in a way he hoped she didn't catch. Same night, he said. You're sure? Pretty sure. Why? Is that a big deal? Probably not, he said, and made himself smile so it would land as nothing. It wasn't nothing. It was the exact window Yoon had flagged. He finished the noodles because leaving early would have asked a question he wasn't ready to answer. But his mind was already back in that penthouse. That night he didn't sleep. He pulled the full list of badges that had scanned near the 5th floor in that hour-wide window and started cutting names, one at a time, against who'd actually been in the office versus who'd left for the janitor date. Most of the floor had been watching a restaurant window through their phones that night. Sua's badge was the only one on the list that had no alibi standing next to it. He called Yoon back near 1 in the morning. It's her, he said. Beg Sua, pull everything. Badge history, financials if you can get them, Every device that's touched that floor in the last 2 months. Quietly. You sound sure. She used the janitor date as cover. The whole office was looking at a restaurant window instead of a hallway. He sat back from the monitors. The woman who humiliated Bree for a laugh needed everyone laughing at the same time she needed the floor empty. He thought about Bree handing him a black coffee like it was nothing. About her saying, "I noticed things," like it was a joke. It hadn't been a joke. She'd handed him the missing piece of a 9-figure investigation over a bowl of noodles and had no idea she'd done it. No idea her own humiliation had been the exact cover Suar used to pull it off. If you're loving this story so far, do us a favor. Hit that like button. Drop a comment letting us know what you think happens next. And subscribe so you don't miss what's coming. Now, back to the story. The financials came back the next day, and they weren't subtle once somebody knew where to look. 3 deposits over 2 months, routed through an account that didn't belong to Suar directly, but traced back to her through a shell 2 steps removed. The amounts lined up with badge anomalies on the 5th floor. The earliest one dated 2 weeks before the janitor date, the most recent one the night of it. Same rival firm's fingerprints all over the incoming wire, buried under a logistics consulting front that didn't consult anything. Yoon laid the timeline out on the table in the 3rd floor supply closet that had become their war room. 3 transfers, 3 break-ins, Yoon said. First one's small, feels like a test. Second one's bigger. Third one's the night of your dinner. She used the whole floor being distracted to grab something bigger than the first 2 combined. Whatever she's already handed over, we can't undo. But if she's got a 4th meeting lined up, we can be in the room for it. She won't meet in the building again, Taehyun said. Too much heat now, even if she doesn't know we're watching. Then she meets outside. We follow the money, not the girl. Taehyun nodded, but his mind wasn't fully on the money. It was on the fact that the same building that had made Suar desperate enough to do this had also made Bree the only honest thing standing in the middle of it, without either of them knowing they were standing in the same story. He almost slipped once that week. A board member he'd worked with years ago passed him in the executive elevator lobby, did a double take at his face, opened his mouth like he was about to say a name. Taehyun looked down at his cart, kept moving, and the man seemed to decide he'd imagined it. Close enough that Taehyun told Yoon to keep him off that floor for the rest of the investigation. Suar had felt the walls closing in for days now, a director's clipped tone in a meeting, a badge that took 2 extra seconds to scan at the elevator. She didn't know what they had. She only knew she needed a story ready before they came looking, so she built one. It started as a comment dropped in the break room, timed for an audience. Anyone else think it's weird how much time Bree spends with building staff? Like, after hours weird, a laugh tacked on the end to make it sound like nothing. By that afternoon, it had traveled to a manager's inbox, dressed up as a security concern. HR called Bree in the next morning. No warning, just a message to come to the 4th floor conference room. Bree sat down across from 2 people she barely knew, a folder between them, and listened to a version of her own life that barely resembled it. Questions about her relationship with a member of the cleaning staff. Questions that assumed guilt before they'd finished being asked. "I had dinner with someone," Bree said, voice steady, even though her hands weren't. "Twice. That's the entire relationship you're describing. We're not accusing you of anything," the HR rep said. "We just need to understand the nature of the contact, given some questions that have come up about access on the 5th floor. Ask me anything you want. I've never been past the 2nd floor without an escort in my life." They wrote that down like it needed writing down. Bree sat in that chair for 25 minutes, and by the end of it she weighed leaving Seoul before she weighed anything else. Taehyun watched the last 5 minutes of it from a service hallway across from the conference room, cart parked against the wall, mop still in his hand. He could see her through the glass, spine straight, jaw tight, about a man sitting 40 feet away who could end the meeting with one sentence. He took a step toward the door, stopped. Yoon had told him that morning they were 2 days from finalizing the case. Enough evidence to move, if nobody spooked Sua into destroying what was left. Walking in now, badge and name and everything, would end Bree's meeting and blow 5 weeks of work at the same time. He knew it. He made himself know it, standing there with his hand not quite reaching the door handle. He stepped back into the hallway instead, watched through the glass as Bree gathered her things and walked out of that room alone, nobody standing up to walk out with her. She passed him in the hallway 2 minutes later, didn't stop. "Bree," he said. She slowed, half-turned. Her eyes were dry, but there was something behind them, working very hard to stay that way. "Not now, Taehyun," she said. "Please, not now." She got in the elevator. The doors closed between them, and he stood there in his grey jacket, doing absolutely nothing, while the one person who'd never once treated him like he was invisible walked out of the building, believing she might actually be alone in this. He went straight back to the supply closet and called Yoon. 2 days is too long. Whatever you've got, finish it by tomorrow night, and get HR the real story before end of day. I don't care what it costs the cover. She doesn't sit in another room like that again. By the time Bree got home that night, an email was already sitting in her inbox from HR. Sent late, worded carefully, the inquiry into her conduct had been closed, no findings, no further action required. No explanation for why it had opened in the first place. She read it twice, felt nothing close to relief, and closed her laptop without answering. She didn't know that 30 minutes after she'd walked out of that conference room, a director she'd never spoken to directly had gotten a call telling her to end the inquiry that night and scrub the file. She didn't know why. She just knew the ground under her had shifted again, without anyone telling her which way. The email went out Friday morning. Subject line dressed up plain and official. Company recognition ceremony. All staff required. Main atrium, 4:00 p.m. Sua read it twice at her desk and let herself smile for the first time in a week. She'd heard the whispers, top performer, leadership acknowledgement. Whatever heat she'd felt the last few days, it hadn't caught up to her, or so she told herself. She picked out what she'd wear for it, like the promotion was already signed. Bree almost didn't go. She sat in her apartment that morning, turning her badge over in her hand, thinking about a HR email with no real answer in it, and a hallway where a man she'd started to care about had looked at her and said nothing worth saying. She went anyway, because not going felt like losing, and she'd decided a long time ago she wasn't going to hand anyone that. The atrium filled up fast. Every department, every floor, executives she'd only ever seen in framed photos near the elevators, standing at the edges of the crowd. A stage had been built overnight, screens mounted on either side, larger than anything the company used for a normal town hall. At 4:00 exactly, the lights dimmed halfway, and a man walked out from the side of the stage in a suit that fit like it belonged to him, because it did. No grey jacket, no cart. Bree's stomach dropped before her mind caught up to what she was looking at. The room did the same thing in pieces. A gasp near the front. The board member from the elevator lobby turning to the person next to him, mouthing, "I told you." Sua's smile stayed frozen on her face. 2 full seconds after everyone around her had already stopped smiling. "My name is Han Tae-hyun," he said, voice carrying easy across a room gone completely silent. "I own this building. I own this company. Some of you have been wondering where the CEO's been the last 5 years. I've been standing in this atrium every day for the last 5 weeks, and most of you never looked at me twice." Nobody moved. 5 weeks ago, I came back to Seoul because someone inside this company was selling our merger plans to a competitor. I didn't come back as myself because the person doing it wasn't going to do it in front of me. They were going to do it in front of somebody they thought didn't matter. The first screen lit up. Security footage, time-stamped, Suar's badge scanning a fifth-floor door. The same night, the timestamp read, as a company-wide restaurant photo still circulating in 3 different group chats. A second screen lit up next to it. A bank transfer, a name blacked out on one end, hers plain on the other. A third, a deleted email, recovered, sent straight to an address tracing back to the rival firm. She used a moment the whole office was distracted by, a personal moment involving 2 of your co-workers, to walk onto a restricted floor undetected. Twice more after that. This week, when the investigation got close, she tried to redirect it onto the one employee who had nothing to do with any of it. Suar didn't run. There was nowhere to run to. She stood there, while 300 people turned to look at her, her mouth moving without finding words that would fix any of it. 2 security officers stepped up on either side of her. She didn't fight it. She just looked out at the room one last time, found no face willing to meet hers, and walked out between them into a silence that followed her the entire length of the atrium. Taehyun didn't watch her go. He was already looking for Bree in the crowd. He found her near the back, arms crossed, face unreadable, still processing that the janitor she'd bought coffee for was the reason 3 screens just tore her co-worker's life apart in front of the whole company, and that the night she'd walked into that restaurant humiliated had been the exact night Suar used her humiliation to do it. "Give me 1 minute," he said into the microphone, "before I finish this." He walked off the stage, straight through the crowd that parted without being asked to, and stopped in front of her. "I should have told you in that hallway," he said, voice dropped low, "just for her. I stood outside that conference room and watched them put you through that, and I did nothing, because telling you the truth would have cost me the investigation. I let you walk out of that building thinking you were alone. I'm sorry. That's not an excuse. It's just true." Bree looked at him a long moment. "You could have stopped it." "I could have. I chose the case instead of you. For 5 minutes, and I'll live with that." She didn't answer right away. The whole room was watching them now, and neither of them seemed to remember that. "Say the rest of it up there," she finally said, nodding toward the stage. "Whatever you were going to say it where they can all hear it." He held her eyes a second longer, then turned and walked back to the microphone. "Most of you knew her as the new hire from Atlanta, the one who got set up on a date with the janitor as a joke a few weeks back. Some of you laughed. I remember exactly who laughed. Nobody in the front rows moved. I was the janitor, and on the night you all watched that dinner happen, a woman standing in this room used your laughter as cover to steal from every one of you. Bree didn't know that. She wasn't trying to solve anything. She just noticed a badge on a floor she wasn't even supposed to be near and mentioned it to me over a bowl of noodles, because that's who she is whether anyone's watching or not. That one detail is the reason all 3 of those screens exist." He found her again in the crowd. "I've sat in a lot of meetings with people who are very good at their jobs. Talent's not rare in this building. What she did 5 weeks ago, treating a man she believed had nothing to offer her with the same respect she'd give anyone else in this room, that's rare. You can teach someone a merger model. You can't teach that." He let his eyes pass over the people who'd laughed that day, and didn't need to say anything else to them. They knew. Effective today, Bree Calloway is being promoted to Senior Director of International Strategy, reporting directly to me. The applause didn't start slow. It started all at once. People who'd laughed at that office joke weeks ago now on their feet, clapping for the same woman like they hadn't watched her walk into that date alone. Taehyun walked straight to her again, past the executives reaching out to shake his hand. "You're really the owner," she said. I'm really the owner. I'm also really the guy who drinks his coffee black and doesn't touch the sugar. Both of those are true at the same time. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh, the first easy one she'd had all day. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Same words she'd said to him by the river, handed back to him now like she needed him to hear them twice, to believe they were true. Whatever this turns into, the job, the company, all of it. I meant that then. I mean it more now. I know, he said. I heard you the first time. I was just scared to say it back. And now I own the building. He held her gaze, steady. Seems like a good place to stop being scared. Neither of them closed the last step between them. Not there. Not in front of 300 people still watching. But he reached out and took her hand, plain and simple, in front of every single person who'd once looked at her like she didn't belong in that room. And nobody in that atrium doubted, watching them stand there together, that whatever came next between them was only just getting started. If this story hit you the way we hope it did, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Afro-Korean Unique Tales so you never miss the next unforgettable story.